Okay, so I believe we are live. I would like to welcome everyone to another Run Wild with Us. Ask us pretty much whatever you want. I am Lisa Kastner. I'm the founder and executive editor of Running Wild, which consists of Running Wild Press and Rise Press. I am here today with Henry Hertz, one of our amazing editors, and Cody Cisco, another one of our amazing editors. And we're here again to answer any questions that you may think of. It doesn't mean it's going to be the right answer. It doesn't mean it's going to be a complete answer. It doesn't even mean that it's going to be an answer that actually relates back to the question you ask, but it'll be an answer. So with that,
it may not even be in the same language.
It may not even be in the same. It may not even. It could be sign language. Who knows, right? Because we're that kind of people. So with that, I am going to ask Henry Hertz if he would kindly introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about you and your amazingness, please.
I'm the traditionally published author of 12 picture books for young readers, obviously. I have a number of short stories that are for young readers as well as middle grade and young adult readers, and I have a bunch of adult short stories that have been published. I have edited 3 anthologies, one for myself and one for Alba Whitman and one for Blackstone. And of course, I hope to be editing novels for Lisa. Hasn't happened yet, and that's fine. I'm going to find a good match. I particularly like fantasy and science fiction.
Oh, that's my home base too.
All right.
You need to mention your Kirkus review win.
Oh, so my most recently published picture book, I Am Smoke. It's a spare lyrical autobiography of smoke. Smoke telling how it's been used by people for beneficial purposes throughout the ages and across the world. It's gotten a lot of positive review. It got a Kirkus Star. It got ALA Notable Children's Book. I literally have, where did I do?
Show us.
It's, I don't know if you can see this. It's like, it's got all this.
Ah, there you go.
Lots of neat awards. So made a bunch of lists. Kirkus's 150 most anticipated fall books, school library journals, predictions, New York Times best illustrated children's books, New York Public Library's best books for kids 2021, National Council for Social Studies 2022 notable social studies trade books for young people, a bunch of wonderful things like that. So it's my first nonfiction. It's creative nonfiction, obviously, because smoke isn't a person, but I always think it's fun to take inanimate objects and give them personalities.
Are you sure that smoke is not a person?
Pretty sure.
Pretty sure? Okay, I'll take it. Awesome. Cody, would you share a little bit about yourself and your fabulousness, please?
Yeah, I'm first excited to get a copy of I Am Smoke for my nephews. I think they'll love that. I'm an indie author, freelance editor, and a publisher. The 4th volume of the Made in LA series is coming out May 1st, and so we're very excited about that. Myself and the other Made in LA co-editors. And in terms of my editing, I really love novels that bridge different genres. And my home base, as I said before, is really science fiction and fantasy. So I've been really glad to work on a couple manuscripts recently that do that kind of fun stuff. I've also tended to lately be working on a lot of LGBTQ manuscripts, which has been a lot of fun as well.
Fantastic. And for those who don't know, this Peter Wright is one of our amazing acquisition editors and also a general editor. So he is typically with us like every other week. So Peter, right now we're just basically introducing ourselves. So would you kindly do a more elaborate introduction?
Of course, and thanks for having me.
And if you want to
Um,
include a dance as well, expressionistic dance with your introduction, we would appreciate it.
That doesn't seem like Peter's
ballet,
style.
modern? I mean, what would you prefer? No, I'm acquisitions editor at Running Wild. I've published a novella. I've had a couple of short stories and some essays published. What I tend to like when I'm editing is more, as Lisa knows, literary, more character-driven stories that are digging into the human psyche, trying to figure out why people are doing what they're doing, why characters are doing what they're doing, and how that all works out in the bigger scope of things. So, kind of, I'm really excited about Cormac McCarthy's books coming out, as dry and as raw as he writes, but he is just fantastic in terms of what he can tell and the stories that he can tell. So,
Now, you need to brag a little bit about some of the wins that some of the books that you've edited have had. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
I don't like to brag. Two of the books that I've written or edited have won starred Kirkus reviews. Terrence Hawkins' Turing's Graveyard and Curtis Smith's The Magpie's Return. Both excellent books. Terry's book is a collection of short stories, very out there, very avant-garde, very gripping, to the point where you don't know what's going to happen next. You really want to read what's going to happen next. And Magpie's Return is just astounding in its scope and scary in its possibilities. So both books were recognized by Kirkus Reviews. They were both long listed for Book of the Year. So really proud of that. Really proud of those writers. And I'm actually editing Curtis's second book, or Curtis's latest book, The Lost and the Blind, to kind of a follow-up piece to The Magpie's Return. And it too is fascinating.
Well, and both Terry and Curtis's books were named to the top 100 for the years that they were published. So for 2019 and 2020. So.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, good job, Peter.
Cool.
And now joining us as well is Amy Hardy. So she's one of our newest editors. Amy, we're basically just going through, I don't know why I keep saying basically, it must be like a tick. Anyway, we're going through and introducing ourselves. So if you would just, say a little bit about you and your experiences and anything else you'd like to share.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for having me. My name is Amy Hardy. I'm one of your newest editors here at Running Wild Press. I have a background in writing and editing. And also education. So I taught high school for a number of years, some college writing courses. So actually, I just love the writing process. So anything to do with writing, I'm all about. Right now, we're living in Birmingham, Alabama. I have a husband and 2 kids that always keep me on my toes. And I have lots of story ideas that come out of the crazy things that they say. So yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Fabulous. So, for those who may be joining a little bit late, you are welcome to ask us literally anything you want. We are more than happy to answer for in the interim while we're waiting for your incredible questions. We will typically go like round robin and ask a variety of questions that may generally arise. So one question that we do get asked a lot, which is, I would be shocked if every press didn't get asked this, but what is our acquisition process? And it's kind of interesting because we actually most recently changed it up a little bit, or a lot. We changed it up a lot. We typically, I think this year we got somewhere around 800 and 1,000 submissions. And we usually will have a reader or have a couple people go through and identify those that are of the greatest possibility. Now, understand what that means is it also fits within our our objectives and our overall vision. So if someone could send us an amazing collection of poetry, but if the poetry, if they're not narrative poems, then it's not within our overarching vision, because we publish great stories. So that would exclude anything that's more of like a vignette, anything that doesn't actually have a narrative arc. So we go through those. We then share among the acquisition editors, as well as we actually have an agency that represents our authors as well as us in terms of licensing. So our agency is a part of the review process as well. We go through all the finalists and identify those that we think would be the strongest to publish minimally in the next year, if not in the subsequent 2 years. The reason I say subsequent 2 years, as Peter knows, we only publish around 10 to 20 books per year per imprint. So because of that, if you come out of it, you've got like 100 viable stories. You can't publish 100, we clearly can't publish them all in a year. So we have to whittle it down to 1/10 of that. And if there's more, if there are a lot more than those that we think would be great, sometimes what we'll do is we'll identify those we think may be better suited possibly for the subsequent year and make an offer to the author from there. We also will then, once we've made an offer, if the author is interested, we'll then basically marry the stories or the narratives to our editors. So what I mean by that is all of our editors have amazing backgrounds, quite varied, very open-minded, I guess you could say, narrative or editorial processes. They all go through a test. So all these poor guys were actually given a test before we said, yeah, please join us. And so we look at their backgrounds, their preferences in terms of stories, and then marry it to stories that we've accepted within that upcoming year or two, and ask, hey, is this something that you would be interested in? And that way, the thought behind that is that both the editor and the author will have the best experience possible within that collaborative editorial process, and we'll get the best, absolutely most amazing stories out of it. The only exclusion to that is our novella anthologies. I usually edit the novella anthologies more so because, in truth, they're typically pretty dang long. It usually consists of 2 books, not 1. Poor Peter had to go through the process of editing a book of novellas for us, a year, 2 years ago? 2 years ago.
Two novellas.
I feel guilty putting someone else through that. So I assigned them to myself. And then Ben Wright usually edits our short story anthologies. It's for whatever reason, he loves doing that. So, and with that, since I'm going to pause for a second, I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that. I don't know, Peter, if there's anything you want to add to that commentary.
I have a couple of things to add about the the round robin session we had last Monday with a bunch of editors and everything like that. But I'd rather bring that up later a little bit.
Oh, okay. So while we're on the topic, Don McIntyre asks, you're writing a story and get stuck. In your opinion, what's the best way to get past this? Wow, that's a great question. So me personally, as a writer, when I get stuck in a story, I like to read a lot of nonfiction. Like, I personally will read a lot of historic, like, lesser known history. I'll read mythology. I'll read things that might kind of spur or spawn my brain to get unstuck and say, oh, I could use that, or that's really interesting. I have no idea that happened. Maybe I can use something similar to that in my own work. Henry, how about you? What do you do to get unstuck?
Are you suggesting I get stuck? So what I find is useful is I like to have multiple irons in the fire. So I might have multiple projects going on at the same time, or if I don't, I could always initiate a short story project. So I have learned to listen to the muse and to not try to force it. So there's one school of thought, like Jane Yolen, that says just put your butt in the chair and start writing, just keep writing. And I've found if I do that, it's fine, but I'm better off refreshing my palate, so to speak, by writing something else and then coming back. A lot of times, gain insights just over the course of time in the story or novel that I was writing. So it's just switch things up, refresh your
Got
brain
it.
by focusing on something else.
Cody, how about you?
I have found it helpful when I've gotten stuck in the past to sometimes back up within the story and take it in a different direction. Sometimes I feel like I've written myself into a corner, or I've missed out on a piece of the writing that was really exciting to me, and I back up and I come back to what that what that energy or juice was, and try to exploit that a bit. I also find it really helpful to step away for a while. You know, there's a lot of thinking that happens in the subconscious and in the background as we go about our lives. And so if I am stuck, I'm kind of aligned with Henry in that I don't try to force it, but give it some time to percolate and come back to it when I'm ready and when I know where the story needs to go.
Awesome. How about you, Peter?
I echo Henry's and Cody's sentiments. Like, step away from it. I mean, just completely, just do something that's completely not related to the story. Let your brain relax. Let it work on its own. Like Cody said, let it percolate, because it's gonna do what it's gonna do. If weather permits, I just like, if I'm stuck, I like getting on my bike, my motorcycle, and just riding for an hour or two, just because it's a completely different experience. It frees my brain up to think in different areas of itself. And then when I come back, I get my butt in the chair, like Henry said. But one of my teachers, Richard Bausch, says, you're not going to break it. Even if you're stuck, keep pushing on. You're not going to break it. At worst, you have to go back and do it again. But just keep playing with it. See what you can come up with, kind of thing, because it's not going to break. It's still your project. It's still your story.
I love that. Now I need a motorcycle. Amy, how about you?
I love that too. I also take drives if I am stuck, and there's some kind of science behind it. I forget exactly what it is about, like your eyes moving in certain ways. But yeah, I'll go run. I'll go on a drive, and then I also, if I kind of know where I want it to go, but I don't know how it's going to connect, sometimes I'll write letters to myself in the morning, and I will just talk about the character, and I'll say, you know, I'm really passionate about this with him and or her, and then I want her to do this in this situation, but I'm not quite sure, and I'll put the letter away, and then I'll read it maybe the next day or the next week, and I'll say, oh, that's what I wanted to put in here, maybe, you know, down the road if I'm looking at it. So I don't know, just approach it in a different way is usually what I do.
That's fantastic. I mean, I've never even thought of that, but you're engaging a different part of your brain because you're talking to yourself on a different level. That's fascinating. Wow, that's cool. I might try that.
Yeah, I love that. It's similar to a concept that I had an instructor put out there before, like write a letter to the author asking them, like, what are you going to do next before you go to bed? And then, because it kind of forces your brain to like be in that space. I've never actually done it. I still loved it. Like now I need to do it. So not that I want to brain freeze, but yeah, fantastic. That's absolutely amazing. Cool. Okay. Jack Cooper. He says, stories without happy endings, do they typically get published? Peter, what do you think?
I hope so. I hope they get published a lot. Life has got its own little mysteries going on, so happy endings are always a good thing in a story. It just depends on the book. It depends on the author. You know, if you're going to start out in a strong position, you may end up in a sad kind of denouement kind of thing. But none obviously are coming to mind. But having a good ending to a book. Well, what am I trying to say? I'm not coming up with any examples. Long story short, I think it's a good thing if you can pull it off. The book that I'm working on definitely is going to have a happy ending. It's going to scare the hell out of the main character, but it's going to be a happy ending, and she'll be in a better place because of it.
Amy, what do you think?
I mean, I'm a sucker for the sad endings. I really do enjoy that. Or I like how sometimes it can finish in a tidy way, but maybe in a way that we would not have expected in the beginning. I really like those kind of endings. I'm trying to think of examples too, Peter. I don't know any off the top of my head, but yeah, I love some sad stuff. And even if it ends with our character still wanting something, but maybe learning something in the process, I think those are really good as well.
Cool.
Yeah, Harry Potter just came to mind, so those books end on an up note.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Cody, what do you think?
I am attracted to dark stories as well. But you know, when I'm working with an author, it's their choice where they want to land the ending. And I'm working on a manuscript right now where this is the conversation with the author. He is concerned that what he's written already is too dark. It kind of veers into places that he, you know, finds uncomfortable. And so we're having that conversation. It's like, you know, you can wrap up different aspects of the story with a different tone. You know, if the character has more than just one thing at stake, you might have them lose some but gain others. And so it's a fun puzzle to try to work on, to figure out, you know, that you're not just striking one note in the end, but you're leaving, you know, it's almost like you want a chord to play in the end, and there's a major and a minor and other notes that resonate. So, you know, to the original question, which we promised we didn't always have to answer them. Yes, yeah, happy stories do get published, especially in some genres, you know, that tend to be a little lighter, like romance or even the cozy mystery. But I think it's important for authors to think about, well, what is the story they're trying to tell? They can be dark, they can be happy, and there's room for all of it.
Awesome. Henry.
Well, certainly in children's books, it's a lot more common to have a happy ending. Um, I think it was Cody's comment of the analogy to music, which is the story can have ups and downs. I tend to like stories with positive endings. It doesn't have to be happy, but you know, the villain got his comeuppance, and so yeah, that's my preference. But there's certainly plenty of interesting stories, even kids' stories, that either have an ambiguous ending, or clearly it's not such a good ending, but there's still a lesson to be learned. So it's great for storytelling. John Klassen's classic "This Is Not My Hat" is one of my favorites. Basically, a little fish steals a big fish's hat, and at the end, the big fish has his hat back. We're not sure if the little fish got his ass kicked or got eaten, but I love the ambiguity of that. It's got the message of, hey, don't take stuff that doesn't belong to you. So any and all of the above.
Awesome. So I'm going to give you, Jack, the most roundabout answer of them all. So in my opinion, the most successful stories are those that engage the reader emotionally. And so what that means is it doesn't have to be a happy ending. It doesn't have to be a sad ending. It has to have a variety of emotional engagements where the reader experiences a variety of emotions, and they're taken on a whirlwind ride. And that in those engagements, at least for me, the expectation is that the reader is also going to then turn around and say, I feel this. I can assimilate to this. This is something that I have personally experienced, or I can associate with. I think that's part one. And then part two is that the ending has to be something where the ending itself, so not just the overarching narrative, but the ending itself has to be something where the reader is left saying, and that can be oh my God, I'm so happy. I'm so glad this, ended the way it did. That was phenomenal. It can also be what a jackass. Holy crap. I can't believe he did that. For me, what's not successful is when the story is something that the ending is something that could have been predicted. and the reader sits there and says, "Oh, yeah, I saw that from a million miles away," or you feel like when it ends, it's something that is it's trite, right? Or it's a cliche. To me, those are not successful endings. So I think to Peter's point, I mean, a lot of Harry Potter did not have a happy ending, but it took you on those emotional journeys. It took you on those emotional rides, and the characters experience things that enabled the reader to say, "I feel this. I know this. This is something that I can I feel personally." So that's, to me, that's what really matters. It's not so much if it's a happy ending or a sad ending. So obviously, to Peter's point, do they get published? Of course they do. But again, it's not about the ending itself. It's about how successful is the overarching story. So Cremo says, bonjour, bonjour. And I think that's all the questions we have right now. So again, we're almost halfway through. So I'm going to remind folks, thank you so much for joining us again for another Run Wild with Us, Ask Us Anything. And that's true. You can go ahead and feel free to ask us any questions that you may like. We will be more than happy to answer. So on that note, what I'd love is, so Cody literally just, I want to say in the last 48 hours, finished editing a book for 2023. So I wondered, Cody, would you be willing to talk a little bit about your process, and about the book itself, anything that you want to share about that overall editing journey?
Yeah. It's it's this funny profession we have where we put in this work and then we see the result years and years later. That's true whether you're the writer, editor, or publisher. So it's like, oh, great, a milestone, and then like there's this long process still for the book to become, to go into the world. It's been a pleasure to work with the author Michael Kiggins. He has written a book that is about a gay man with OCD in the early 2000s. He's in Memphis. And what first struck me was this really interesting voice and character that felt familiar, but also something I hadn't seen before, which is, that's a really tricky balance to land. And also, this idea of kind of subculture historical fiction and getting a glimpse into a world that existed for a very brief moment in time. Particularly relevant for this story is the period of time after HIV retrovirals came into play, but before PrEP. Anyway, these are like important to the characters and into the story. But it's been a journey because the manuscript came in at about, I want to say 55 to 60,000 words, and now it's around 92. And so part of the work with Mike was to tease out areas of the story that were underdeveloped in the first draft and find ways to strengthen those and bring some of the themes that he was working with to the fore by building out kind of relationships that the main character had with some of the other characters and some of the plot in I'd say the first 40 to 50% of the book was where a lot of that took place. So that's a long-winded answer of saying it's been a lot of fun. And also, it's so gratifying when you see sort of an author through the course of working together kind of build their confidence and get sort of bigger and louder with what they're saying in the book, even as the language could be, it could be delicate or it could be sad or whatever. But just to see like the way that they approach their edits evolve is a real, that's just wonderful. It's one of the best parts of the process. So look for the book in 2023.
Yes, it should be in 2023. Yeah, I'm very excited to get that one out there. So.
Yeah, and I think, at some point it'd be great. I'd love to talk with Mike on here about the process and, some of the ways that the story evolved and, some of his hesitations and questions, and then, how we worked through those.
Absolutely. I
idea.
think that's a fabulous idea. So awesome. All right. So again, a reminder, feel free, go ahead, toss your questions in the comments section of the chat, and we will be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. I want to do a quick pitch for, we've got a bunch of stories coming out in May, and which of course I picked up the wrong thing. Let me pick up the right thing. So the first one that's coming out is The Re-Remembered by Dwight Wilson. That's coming out May 4th. I have had the honor of working with Dwight. I want to say it's been 4 years now. So he writes a collection of short stories that are historic fiction based on actually his family history. So it's really, really interesting. Dwight is African American, Native American, as well as has of European descent in his background. So it really captures a lot of America's history in his short story collection. Another great one is Escape Route by Ilan Barnehama. That is also coming out on May 4th. That one, it's really interesting. It's basically about, again with the word basically, it's about a gentleman who decides that just in case New York, because technically New York is an island, is New York City is invaded, he needs to create an escape route. So it takes you on that emotional ride of everything that he experiences throughout it. Another one that's coming out is Antlers of Bone by Taylor Denton. That's coming out May 10th. Antlers of Bone is really interesting because it's set in a psychiatric ward, and it's from the perspective of a woman who, a young girl who was put in the psychiatric ward because she had attempted to commit suicide, in part because she couldn't tell if this monster or beast that kept following her around was real or not. So the way it's written, the reader also questions it. So you get to figure out at the end of the book whether is this monster real or is it really just a figment of her imagination. Another one is Dance Among the Flames by Tori Eldridge. That's coming out May 24th. I had the honor of working with Tori. Tori is actually a best-selling author of multiple mysteries. And this book, Dance Among the Flames, got a starred Kirkus review. It was just an absolutely phenomenal review. I couldn't be prouder for all the work that she's done with it. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. You need to go out. You need to Google search Dance Among the Flames and her first name, Tori, Tori, so that you can look it up for yourself. I promise you, you will not be you'll not be disappointed at all.
I'm very excited about this book, and it happens to be releasing on my birthday. So I figure that's a gift from Tori to me.
Well,
Tori's fabulous.
We need to make that happen. We need to make it. I need to arrange for you to have a copy of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. We I think the last time I saw her was just before the pandemic. We met for dim sum, and it was lovely. And I know she's been working on this book for a long time and is very excited for it to come out.
Absolutely. She worked on it for like a decade before she and I worked on it together. So yeah, it will not disappoint. It's another one, Cody, similar to what you described. Like it started at 60,000 words and I think it's now at like 85. Mm-hmm. So I'm like I said, I'm not gonna spoil anything for anybody. You need to pick it up yourself.
It sounds magical.
Another amazing one is Durbar's Apprentice by Remington Blackstaff. That one is one of our Rise publications or Rise stories. I really, really invite you. That's another one. I don't want to ruin it. You need to do a Google search on Durbar's Apprentice. And that one is also coming out May 25th. And the last one in May is Giving the Devil His Due. Now, that is actually an anthology that benefits the Pixel Project. So it's a series of short stories written by very well-known horror writers, and they are absolutely incredible all around the theme of giving the devil his due. So I really invite you, and that's another one. Definitely check it out. It's already been nominated for several awards. Some of the short stories have been put in well-known lists. So definitely check that out as well. And I've now talked entirely too much. So I want to open it up. I don't know, Cody, Peter, Amy, Henry, is there anything that you guys want to talk about?
Well, I can talk about the session, the acquisition or other session we had earlier this week about how everything is about winnowing it down to the quality novels, because every novel we get in, I mean, they've got some positives, they've got some minuses. It's a which stories can reverberate or can resonate the most with authors. So what we did this last Monday was to get together with I think 3 editors, plus Ben, you and me, Lisa, and we all went at stories from our own perspective, from our own point of view, obviously. But we read the synopsis, we read each other's notes, we studied the writing, and then as a group, we decided which to go forward with, which is a yes, which is a maybe, which is a no, kind of thing. It's all about the process, about choosing the best words, or choosing the best writing for the press, and making it a joint decision, a joint discussion, because different attitudes and I mean different points of view have different tastes. Because some of the books that I was reading in that I voted yes for weren't books I necessarily would want to read myself, but I know that they have a market. I know people would want to read them, and we would like to publish them. So it was a very interesting session, and I hope we do it again.
Yeah, I think that's the process we're going to do moving forward, is have that session like once a year, just sitting down, maybe twice a year. It depends on like how much we get, moving forward at the end of the acquisition session. Because to your point, Peter, I think we got it down to 12 absolute yeses for Running Wild. I think it was like 6 absolute yeses for Rise. A lot of I call them yes maybes, and the yes maybes typically are ones where either we know that there's something about it that is having us lean towards a yes. Usually it's like a really good writing. Maybe it's good writing and the author has a good bio. They've done some interesting work. It may also be, but there's something about it that makes us say, well, maybe we're not sure. And oftentimes it has to do with maybe we've already published books similar to this in the past. Maybe there's already been quite a few stories like this published just in general. So the question becomes, we want to make a deeper read of the overarching story to see, is there something that really differentiates it from what's generally in the market today? And then obviously a bunch that we as a group agree we're not going to publish. And a lot of times, actually, I don't know why this happened, but I was surprised. We had several where the individuals, they didn't submit an entire manuscript. They only submitted like 50 or 100 pages, and then said, like either I'm finishing writing it now or I'll send you the rest of it on request. And then when we asked for it on request, they didn't do it. So just for anyone who's watching, we need the full manuscript. You would be surprised by the number of people who start off writing a piece and for whatever reason never finish it. And, we really need to focus on those who've actually completed the manuscript itself. Because as you've already heard from Cody and from Peter and from myself, through that editorial process, which is really a collaboration of the editor and the author, that a lot of times that piece may evolve quite a bit, right, during the editorial process. It doesn't mean it absolutely 100% will happen. We have had works that when we received them and went through the review process, was very light editing. But then there are also those that, again, it's a collaboration with the editor and with the author as well. So yeah, I think I'm glad that you thought that was a valuable exercise. I really kind of felt like I wish we were all in the same room with like snacks and like just brainstorming like with what we thought worked really well and all that kind of thing. So maybe post pandemic, we can fly folks into like a central location, because for those who don't know, like I'm in Los Angeles. One of the others on the call was in Los Angeles. Ben's in New Mexico, right? Peter, you're in Florida, and then our agency is in Florida as well. So I don't know, maybe we need to pick like Idaho or something, and we'll all meet at like a Hilton. I don't know. It could be interesting.
One of the cool things about that I just remembered is that we were shifting gears, going from story to story to story. So it's really neat because it touched on different senses and touched on different aspects of us as editors. Like, okay, well, now we're looking at this one. Now we're looking at this one. There was no really time to get into deep analysis. Is what hit you? How did you respond to it initially? What was the first thought that you had? And then you move on to the next one. It was really fascinating.
Yeah, because we had 104 books to go through, and I think we still have 30 that we're gonna do. 40. We still have 40 to do next week. So I'm actually amazed that we got through 70. I thought that was pretty wild. So yeah, I mean, yeah. And to your point, I think that just having that gut reaction, right? You've and everybody had reviewed the pieces beforehand, right? But when you're doing it in real time, it's more so about like a gut response to like maybe the initial couple of pages, the summary, the pitch itself, the author's bio, the log line, and then seeing like, okay, what's working, what's not working, and where can we take it from there? Because to your point, there were quite a few that we said, you know what, I'm going to put this in the yes maybe category because I want to go back to the author and ask him a couple of questions, right? And that's not uncommon. So awesome. So while we've been talking, Dawn asked another amazing question. What's the best way to get your novel considered by a celebrity book club like Good Morning America or Reese Witherspoon? Whew. I am going to start with Cody just because he's the immediate one to my, I guess my right, or I don't know. He's right.
I'm going to have to pass on that because I am not in good standing with any celebrity book clubs. That's just, one can hope and dream, but I'm not there yet.
Cool. Peter, what do you think?
I would say it's pretty easy to get into a celebrity book club with like Reese Witherspoon because all you got to do is meet Cheryl Strayed because they're pretty tight. You get to know Cheryl, you probably get to know Reese.
I noticed that on Twitter. I actually do know Cheryl Strayed. I went to Breadloaf with her, so.
Oh, cool! I met her at a reading.
But yeah, no, Anyway, Amy, what do you think?
If we all had the answer to this question, we would definitely be BFFs with Reese. No, but I think it goes back to really identifying, okay, what are you saying with your story and who are you saying it to? So really identifying who that audience is. If it is Good Morning America, their audience, great. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's people like you or people who have had similar experiences or similar experiences as your main character. So I think, before we go Good Morning America, really take a look at who are you speaking to? What do you want to tell them through your work? That's where I would start.
Henry, how about you?
Yeah, I think Amy's on the right track. Getting a celebrity endorsement or exposure is kind of a shortcut, and it's very unlikely. So I think your focus should be write the best book you can and let the kudos come to you. I don't think you chase the kudos.
So I'm gonna sort of not really answer your question, but I'll give you, it'll be a response. So I agree with everyone, right? If we had the magic wand and could suddenly have everyone in a famous book club, then we would be doing it already for all of our books, right? And for all of our friends. So I think that the key is, and I'm basing this on both the Cheryl Strait comment. Also, I have a friend who did get picked for the Good Morning America book club. And I know a few people who were picked for Hello Sunshine. And the paths they took to get there were very different. So the woman who was picked for Good Morning America, she actually had a publicist. She and the publicist sat down, and to Amy's point and Henry's point, figured out what were some key themes that ran throughout the book itself that may attract different book clubs, and then sent basically like a pitch kit, right? So a pitch kit is usually, it's like a copy of the book, summary, log line, and then, whatever things that they feel might attract that book club to want to at least consider it. And they didn't actually know it was going to be picked as the book for that month. They found out, I think it was like the day before, believe it or not. So that's one. So that's when you're following the process that's already been put in place. I would say that's the best way to go. The people I knew who were picked for Hello Sunshine, it was a little bit of more roundabout. So it was like they had a friend of a friend who knew someone who worked with Hello Sunshine, and that person had a review copy of the book, loved it, and forwarded it on. And it happened to get into Reese's hands, and it went on from there. So a lot of times it is about, it's who you know, right? And it's also having the courage just to simply reach out to those who you think, again though, who would genuinely enjoy the story itself, both to Amy and Henry's points, because if you send it to a book club that focuses on romance and you wrote a horror story, you're wasting your time and you're wasting their time, right? So, but it's having the courage to go ahead and do the homework and identify where are the fantastic places to submit your novel or your collection or your memoir, or whatever the case may be. Send them an advanced copy, or at least offer to send it to them, and then see how they respond. Because you may really, really, really be surprised at the welcoming response that you receive. I'm going to give you the same advice for blurbs. If you love and admire someone and you are just like, oh my God, if I would be so honored if this person would read my book, do it. Find a way to get in touch with them. Find a way to send them an ARC. Because again, I'd say 80% of the authors that I have interacted with are more than happy to minimally read your story and consider it to provide a blurb. Now, that said, there's going to be plenty who are going to say no, and there's going to be plenty who are going to say, yeah, I'd be happy to, but I'm swamped. And that's okay. The fact is that you've got to try, right? If you don't try, it's just not going to happen. So that is my incredibly long-winded and roundabout, not real answer for you, Dawn. But hopefully that's at least somewhat helpful. So, all right, we only have 10 minutes left. I don't know, guys, if you have any other topics that you want to bring up or raise. Is there anything right now that you guys, like, when you're looking at stories to read or to edit, that you're really attracted to, or that you're like, ah, this is just like a huge turnoff?
I can answer the opposite question, which is a quick way to lose me as an editor is if it's clear that this is your first draft, that it's um, filled with logical inconsistencies, or even something as fundamental as bad grammar and bad punctuation. Obviously, we can fix bad grammar and bad punctuation as part of the editing process, but there shouldn't be a lot of it. The manuscript shouldn't be rife with problems, because that suggests that you should be putting your best foot forward always. And we know it's never going to be perfect, but I think you want to, there's only one chance to make a good first impression. So make sure you put the time in to run your manuscript through critique groups. Whether or not you hire a private editor or not, that's your choice, but make sure it's had multiple eyes on it before you send it in, so that you're making a good impression.
Awesome.
I'll also add another common pitfall that I see a lot is writers telling a lot of things in the very few first few pages. So we have a main character, and I know that you want to give us all the background right away, but a lot of times you can kind of wait on that, and that makes the character a little more interesting to us. Like there's this mystery, there's like an onion, we want to peel all the layers off and get to know this person. So again, it's okay that we don't know everything about them yet. You can put us in a little bit of an action, a scene, and we can get to know them just like we would get to know someone else in the room. So that's a really good kind of tip that I see a lot is, telling who this main character is. Let us find out. That's the fun part.
Great.
Yeah, don't do a data dump of backstory up front. Let us guess. For me, the things that turn me off in the story is when the writer doesn't realize that they're creating a world. That they're saying, okay, this character's saying this. I have no idea what this character looks like. Now he's doing this. Now he's doing this. Now she's doing that. Now she's doing that. And I don't know where they are. I don't know what they're looking at. I don't know how it sounds, how it feels, how it tastes in some respect. But there's no connection to what reality. We're building worlds. We have to immerse the readers in our imagination, and we need to make it real. We need to involve the five senses, and we need to make right from the very beginning to draw the reader in to say, okay, this is a world, this is a door I want to enter. This is someplace I want to go into and learn about and explore, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I agree with all that Peter and Amy and Henry said. That's a lot of good advice. When I'm looking at a story, I usually like to accept, for example, in the Made in LA anthology, I'm always looking for two hooks in the first few pages. The first hook is curiosity. Like I want it to spark some interest in me to find out what happens. And then the second is empathy. Like I have to care about the characters on the page at least a little bit. If I've got no connection with them and I don't care about them as characters, then there's no reason for me to keep reading. I'll put the book down. So I if you're an author and you're figuring out how to start your story, always think about like what is it that you're using to hook the reader, and that should be a deliberate choice that you're making, not something that you come at by accident, because it kind of reveals like what's the promise of the story. What is this journey you're taking them on?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everyone. Another big one for me is know why you're writing what you're writing. Like every sentence should have a purpose. If we've seen submissions, we've seen works where it was highly repetitive and there wasn't a reason for it. And oftentimes part of the editing process will ask, why does this occur, or why is the sentence here? I mean, not saying why does the sentence here, but why is this happening? What's the intent of this? And the reason for that is oftentimes, we all do this, by the way, as a part of our writing process. You free write, because oftentimes in the free writing, you'll discover things about the characters, about the environment, about the impetus for why things are occurring. you discover a lot more in that free writing, and that's great. But to Henry's point, that's your first draft. That is not your second draft. That is not the draft you then send on to a press for consideration or an agency for consideration. You then go back and you go through it and figure out what in this is needed to ensure that this story is successful, that it is complete, that it's full, that the readers remained engaged. And what in this was just part of a free write? Or in your revisions, did you realize that the narrative arcs had to change somewhat and you needed to do some rewriting along in that way, but maybe that didn't happen yet? All of that needs to occur. And it can become pretty obvious within the first 10 pages if someone has not gone through that process as of yet. So for me, it's to, I think, everyone's point, when it's clear that someone, A, hasn't gone through that revision process, and oftentimes, B, it's very valuable to have someone who you trust to read it, to give you feedback. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't have to be an editor. It doesn't have to be a fellow writer. It can just be someone that you know, who you know is a fan of genres that you're writing in. But that's up to you. And it's also up to you whether you accept the feedback or not, because you don't have to do everything that someone tells you to do. And honestly, for me, if someone tells me that you have to do da 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 to make this work, to me, that's a red flag. That means they're trying to rewrite that story in their own voice, not in yours. The most effective editors that I have found tend to be ones who ask those leading questions and who point things out about the story and talk to you about it. So it's a collaboration, it's a partnership, it's a dialogue, so that you then, as the author, as the owner of that world, then can make decisions, intelligent decisions, on how you want to bring that forward. So awesome. Okay, and with that, we have 2 minutes left. So I want to thank Cody, Peter, Amy, Henry for joining us this week. For anybody who is somewhat new to us, this is Run Wild with Us, Ask Us Anything. It is a combination of the acquisition editors and editors for Running Wild Press and Rise Press. We meet once a week on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And we are here to answer any questions that you may have. Again, honestly, it doesn't have to be about the editorial process. It could be about, what are our favorite books? It could be about, what did Peter eat for lunch? I don't know. It's totally up to you. But we are more than happy to answer your questions. And so with that, again, I want to thank everybody. Have an amazing, amazing week. I hope you've enjoyed this. And again, feel free to go ahead, submit more questions. You can submit them also to our Rise page and our Running Wild Press page as well. And we'll start the next session with your questions. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Lisa.
Stay safe.
Hey, thank you, Lisa.
See you next week.
Bye. Thank you.
Guys.
Bye.
Bye.